So next, I'd like to briefly look at a few security incidents that have occurred in recent months, two of which have resulted in ransomware activation, but all of them present some lessons learned that are relevant to the conversation of incident response and data protection. We're all on this call especially likely familiar with the typical cyber kill chain. Statistically, we're still aware that our most probable threat vector is endpoint systems. Even today's ransomware statistics call out phishing as the primary method of compromise. And so in the next couple of slides, we're going to briefly review some high-profile attacks beginning in August, September predominantly, all believed to have been carried out in some part by the same threat actor. And that's UNC 3944, aka Scattered Spider. And so in each scenario, the threat actors have managed to compromise lower level systems before stealing credentials and elevating their access throughout the data center and towards public cloud resources, even towards SaaS applications such as OneDrive, Microsoft 365. And most critically, we're noticing a great deal of uptick in the amount of backup systems that are being compromised. And before you know it, the entire infrastructure has been locked out and paywalls are now established at all of the endpoints. So you now have to declare a ransomware emergency. On the 14th of August, Clorox disclosed via the SEC filing that the company had identified unauthorized activity on some of its IT systems. By September 18th, Clorox filed another SEC report that stated it believed the hack was contained, but resulted in slower production rates and an elevated level of consumer product availability issues. But from what we know publicly, Clorox suffered a social engineering attack, reported, not confirmed, to be the threat actor known as Scattered Spider. And so details of this event are still being investigated by the relevant authorities. So any type of forensical information is difficult or hard to come by. But from the news reports that we've read, we know that Clorox stated that all of the US facilities were affected by the cyber attack. So it's very wide-ranging. They managed to move laterally throughout the environment. And the number and significance of those affected systems in this breach is part of the reason that Clorox stated that they'd found difficulty in restoring compromised systems and identifying clean copies of data. Around that same time frame, perhaps a few days apart, this one was detected on September 11th from the Clorox attack. MGM and Caesars Palace had suffered a breach, seemingly by the same perpetrators, using similar social engineering techniques to gain employee access, which was then used to elevate privileges, resulting in similar widespread impact, with slot machines, room services, and amenities all becoming affected by the breach. So the hackers in this instance released a statement and claimed to have acquired super administrative privileges on MGM's Okta environment, managed to own over 100 ESXi hypervisors, and managed to garner global administrator permissions in the company's Azure tenant. MGM's filing with regulators reveals that the fairly significant fiscal impact that MGM may have to suffer because of the result of this attack, around 100 million, with around 10 million going towards consultants and single one-time expenses suffered after the attack. I believe mostly to be on technology consulting services, legal fees, and other expenses for other third-party advisors. Caesars Entertainment, however, which was also hit by a similar ransomware event by similar threat actors. It's said to have paid around 50% of the ransom that was requested, which was 30 million. So they paid around 15 million, believed to be, to prevent the disclosure of the stolen data and obtain access back for those systems. Now, the Okta customer support system breach isn't an example of a ransomware execution. It is the same. It is believed to be the same threat actor as Scatter's Spider, but in this instance, the breach was Okta's support system, and the threat actors again used social engineering and stolen credentials from a support service account, from an employee's personal Google account after they attempted to log into their personal Google account profile while using an Okta laptop. So the support case management system that was breached in this instance used to store HTTP archive files or HAR files, which record browser activity, possibly containing sensitive data, which could include things like the content of pages that were visited, headers, cookies, and other data. But those HAR files were possibly used for session hijacking attacks used to hijack legitimate Okta sessions of 5 of their own customers. Beyond Trust was one of those customers, and one of the first customers to detect and block attempts to log into their in-house Okta administrative account. They shared that forensics data with Okta, showing them that their organization had been compromised. So from those examples shared, we can take away some incident response lessons learned and perhaps apply them in our ideal protection solution. In response to the Okta breach, they took multiple measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. And that included, obviously, things like disabling the compromised account, but also a policy change, blocking the use of personal Google profiles on Google Chrome on Okta managed laptops. But they also deployed additional detection and monitoring rules for its customer support system and binding Okta administrative session tokens based on network location. They effectively updated all of their policies to reflect more stringent application of the acceptable use policy. And most importantly, they improved detection and monitoring, which was also an action taken by MGM and Clorox. And they used a type of geographical fencing or geofencing of the permissible terminals that had access to their more sensitive areas of data. They restricted access based on need to know. As seen in all the cases, containment took several days. In some instances, it took weeks, and the fiscal impact to those organizations was fairly significant as a result. In all cases, it's reported that data exfiltration occurred, and in the cases of Clorox and MGM, no ransoms are believed to have been paid, whereas in the case of Caesars Palace, it's reported that they paid 15 million to the attackers to regain that stolen data. But in this instance, the inability to restore stolen data might be the motivating factor. We don't know for sure, but I imagine that their business plan will be updated to include something like air-gapped data protection in the future. Now, in the cases where the ransomware execution occurred, restoring impacted systems took some time, as did identifying clean copies of the data to restore. The longer this took, the greater the bottom line impact was to each organization.